So first thing I want to ask is kind of just backstory. How did you start?
Yeah.
What's your come up look like? What's the story of you?
Sure. Are we rolling right now?
Yeah. No.
Okay. We're in it.
Yeah,
all right.
it's
So, yeah, like a little bit about me. My name is Aj Grimm. I am a videographer, director, producer, and photographer based here in Logan Square, Chicago. And yeah, I guess I've always been around cameras for as long as I can remember when I was a kid. Sorry, one sec, my freaking...
It's good if it shows, doesn't
okay,
matter. Yeah.
Cool. So I've always been around cameras ever since like I was a kid, you know, just kind of like shooting like videos with my friends. I was very fortunate in high school that my high school had a video lab as well. Yeah, and so like, I'm gonna age myself a bit here, but we were working on the Cheese Grater Max with Final Cut 7, which was not totally new at that time either, but like, that's how I learned like about like keyframing and basic animation stuff, and just like a little bit of color grading and all that kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
And so, you know, after that, you know, I kind of just didn't really think too much more of it. It was just a fun elective that I did, and it was something that I did for fun on the side. Then I went to college in Grand Rapids. I went to Calvin College over in Grand Rapids.
Yeah, that is a sick area.
Yeah, it's a nice area. I have some serious problems with that school, but like, but they had a really good program.
Did they?
And you know, Sam Smart was like an awesome professor over there, and that's kind of how I got like introduced to like studio recording, like live studio recording, and that sort of translated into like also shooting like short form narrative content with like a full crew, using like Blackmagics, red cameras, all that kind of fun stuff back when like those were still like, I mean, they're still hard to get a hold of, but like they were pretty hard to get a hold of.
They were like the D cameras. Yeah.
Yeah, back then, yeah. Then after that, let's see what I do. Graduated college, and then I was like, you know what? I kind of want to, you know, go back home, try to figure out what my next step is going to be, because I was thinking about, you know, New York, obviously, LA, obviously, classic options, because I was like, I want to do movies, I want to do all this stuff, and I did work on a couple of features already at that time, just like within like their grip department or whatever, over in the Cleveland area, which is where I'm originally from, and it was always a lot of fun, but definitely like really soul-sucking at the same time.
I can imagine.
Yeah, so I decided that at that point in my career, LA probably wasn't for me, because I knew that if I was gonna make it, I'd have to either really luck out or grind it out for a really long time doing that kind of work, which I love to do, but I don't know if I personally could do it for that long, you know, like physically, because I mean, there's a reason that like the writers and the grips and electric and all the unions go on strike every so often, because they get totally taken advantage of. So that's when I started like getting into the idea of working for myself, doing freelance work. I had an internship with a company called Sidecar Studios in Grand Rapids. And that led to some freelance work at that time, just editing. And that's when I started to realize that, like, you know, not only are these guys making money doing it, but now I'm starting to make a little bit of money doing it as well. Back to what I was saying is after that internship, after college, I went back to Cleveland, got connected with the Chagrin Documentary Film Fest. That's like their on-site camera dude. Yeah. And we were producing like dailies for their web stuff, because they were also live streaming a lot. Got to meet like a lot of filmmakers there, a lot of documentary filmmakers that were all like from all over different parts of the world. And that was a really awesome experience, because not only did I get to make those connections, but I also got to do, for the first time, what I do now is event video production is kind of my main thing. Which is sick. Yeah, that's a fun. Yeah, it's a fun area of video. And a lot of people don't know about it, honestly. And it's very fast paced, but when you're done, which is nice. Yeah. So it's like, yeah, I'll put in like really long days and nights editing, because a lot of those events, it's like you shoot for the day, you turn in the deliverable that evening, or you're shooting and editing at the same time. And that got me introduced to this guy named Kerry Pryor, who did the practical effects for the Phantasm movies.
Okay.
And so there, in the Phantasm films, there's like this chrome ball, and it like pops open, and it's got all these blades on it. So he did like the prop design for that. And it was just really interesting to like get to know him a little bit more, because he brought me on as his editor for a film that he was working on at that time.
It's a cool opportunity.
And yeah, and then I also got to work for the company that his dad started.
Okay.
As like their in-house video production guy for a company called Tangent. And that was kind of my first exposure into like B2B commercial work. So at that time, I was working on this corporate job, basically learning how to do video production in like a solo sense.
Yeah.
And you know, getting together with like team members, doing shoots, doing some product photography, even like 3D animation, because they would have like a CAD model that they would need to be displayed.
Yeah.
And some of their pieces for like their investor stuff. So getting familiar with that, getting familiar with like working with C-suite folks, and that was 9 to 5, and then from 5 to 9, I would go and work on this feature film.
Oh, that's sick.
It was a lot of fun. It was a grind.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a lot of fun, you know, and I just kind of realized that, you know, I really loved doing this. I was, for the first time in my life, like actually making some money for myself that I could like save and, you know, start to plan ahead. And, you know, those opportunities, like I started to realize that like I wanted to go out to like a different city, and it's only fair I tell you this part of the story too, because I told the other guy, but I actually got fired from that movie.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, because there was a computer situation where like we had to like reformat the computer. So I did all the backups on the hard drives and stuff, and on external hard drives.
Where this is going.
I know. And then, you know, I check in the next day after hours, and you know, he's like looking for this After Effects project. He's like, "Where's the thing?" And I was like, "Well, did you check the hard drive backup that I made for you before we reformatted everything?" He's like, "Yeah, but I saved like the project files and all the assets in the downloads folder, which is a temporary folder in Windows." So that's they needed a scapegoat. I was some kid.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Dude, I'm sorry. It's like it's either you or me, and like I'm the director." I'm like, I get it. So I mean, we were both working crazy hours, so it's like, you know, mistakes happen, but that was the final push I needed to like, okay, now I need to go somewhere, because I stayed around for that at that company for a little while, and then I was like, you know what, I'm gonna try something different. I went out to New York, and I interviewed with some people, and you know, reached out to some folks, had a couple interviews in LA, but like there was something about Chicago that kept calling me, and so I just moved to Chicago. And while I had like some interviews that were still going on in those other cities, and it's funny, right when I finally got to Chicago is when CBS had reached back out to me. They were one of the companies I had like applied for, CBS in New York. And they were like, "All right, we'll have you in for an interview tomorrow. Are you available?" And I had just finished like unpacking my last box. I was like, "No, I can't do it anymore," because I was committed at that point.
Yeah.
And didn't really have any connections at all, like none, zero. And got connected with a couple people through some comedy classes that I was taking at the time, because one of the reasons I came to Chicago is because I used to do improv, and I was always interested in getting into stand-up comedy, more just to see if I could do it. And I was taking a stand-up class at that time. I met this guy named John Gallagher, which is like the most Chicago name possible.
Yeah, that's such a Chicago name. It's like straight out of Shameless.
Yeah, literally. And he had some material about video production, and so I got talking to him after class, and I was like, "Hey man, like I want to help you out however I can, because like this is what I want to do as well, and it's like this is my experience, blah blah blah. And I was working a temp job at that time in payroll for the temp agency, so I was like literally signing my own checks, and even signing my buddy's checks, who was like also at the temp agency. Yeah. So I actually had a button next to his profile that like I could technically fire him.
Oh, you could like press
fire.
Yeah.
So that's like not connected at all, but it was just like, I don't know, like I realized through that, you know, brief stint in like corporate, like 9 to 5, that I was like, there's no way this is not for me.
Yeah.
You know, I respect people that do that. I just can't, it doesn't click for me. And so I would just remember being so much happier doing the other job that I was doing. Even though I was working like literally 3-4 times more hours, I was more happy over there.
It was more fulfilling.
It was.
Yeah.
So I, let me see, what was the other thing? Yeah, I got, you know, a phone call from John on my lunch break, and I decided to skip lunch because I was like, no, I want to be like hungry for this, like physically, because I believe that like if you're physically uncomfortable in a situation, you're going to try to, you know, do something to improve that. And so had the phone call, and he said, okay, yeah, I've got like 4 dates for you. Here's the dates. What's your rate? And at that time, I was probably editing for like $5 an hour, $10 an hour, something like that, or like nothing, you know. And he was like, okay, like what's your rate? And I was like, I don't know, $100. And he was like, oh, an hour? And like that blew my mind at that time.
Easy. That's nice.
I was like, I like literally like choked.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, that's fine. And so it just was kind of like one of those moments where I was like, all of a sudden I was like, this could really change my life if this works. So he got back to me and he said, okay, well, we can't do 100, but we can do, you know, like we can do 65 an hour. And I was like, that's still like way better than I was thinking. Cause at that time I was thinking like $100 for like the weekend.
Yeah, the whole edit.
Yeah, or like whatever it was. And so I went back inside and I talked to my supervisor at that time, and I said, okay, I know I have PTO. I have a couple of dates that I want to do for this job that I want to try to do. And so I put in the time, and 5 minutes later, they fired me.
Really?
Like on the spot.
Just right there?
Yeah, they're like, no, you're not a good fit for this company. We need people that are like dedicated. And
That's crazy.
I was like, well, I've never been dedicated to this. And it was casual Friday. And I just remember distinctly, it's like I had just gotten a beer from the cooler because everybody in the office had one. The security guard comes walking over. He doesn't even let me say goodbye to anybody. And I grabbed the beer. I like give him like one of these, and I like finished the whole thing. It was like completely full.
It's like a movie scene.
I know. And then I walked out, and I've never worked for anybody since.
That's awesome.
Except for myself.
Yeah.
It's been like, because at that point I'm like, okay, it's like sink or swim. I'm gonna do it. And you know, I'm very fortunate that I still work with those people because I had that mindset of, okay, if you're gonna make this happen, like you have to do the best that you possibly can. Even if it's not like the best that it in the world, it's like, as long as I do the best to my ability and I'm like willing to like learn, adapt, and be a pleasure to work with, like that's what's gonna get me hired again, hopefully. And that, so far, that's been the case.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I've been very fortunate that like, because of that approach that I've had since then, whenever I work with anybody, even if we're on a shoot like we are right now, it's, I want to be there, like I want to give 100% of whatever I am able to.
Yeah.
And I think that that is what people notice. And I think that if people are, if you can get along with people easily, I think that that also helps a lot, because I've worked with folks that are like extremely talented, but don't have the people skills down, and I don't usually see them as often on set again.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate, but it's just, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what people remember.
I definitely agree. That's why I like doing this whole thing too, is because like interacting with a bunch of people, just meeting a bunch of people, it's like skill points. You're just leveling up every time you do it, you know?
Absolutely. And that, I mean, that network is going to be like, you know, meeting other creators, which is why it's so important to like, I mean, almost all of my work through the Chicago scene is through other Chicago creators.
Yeah.
They say, hey, I've got this shoot. Hey, I've got this client. Hey, I've got X, Y, Z. Because you never know. Like, fortunately, like there's enough work in the city where people can get overloaded. And you know, as creatives, we like help each other out in that sense. So, I mean, I contract out people all the time now, especially with edits. And, or I'll contract people out to fly with me to go somewhere and like do a shoot, like if I have like a corporate gig, because that's what I mostly do.
Yeah.
And because I can't do that by myself, like there's no way. So, and I think that that's a lot of people, they recognize that as well. Because I think that a lot of folks, when they're first starting out, and maybe I'm fortunate that I had a different experience when I was like getting started out, but a lot of people I see when they first are like going to be the content creator or what have you, they take it all on by themselves.
Yeah,
and that's going to kill you. It's like, you know, because it's not, you're not going to be able to produce your best work because you're not good at everything.
Yeah.
You can learn everything, but like being able to reach out to other creatives and be like, hey, I've got this project, like, do you do X, Y, or Z? And like putting together a team, like a lot of times, you know, especially when you're starting out, maybe you don't have that network, or maybe you don't have, you know, the project, the budget for that. But it's always worth asking, you know, like I still do stuff for free just to help people out, you know?
Yeah.
So that's a bit about me.
That's awesome, man. So taking it back just a little.
Yeah.
What, were you always like, hey, I want to be a creative? Because I know you said in high school you kind of had those classes. Was that always like your like mindset goal, or were there parents or people telling you, hey, you should go do this, and then you kind of just chose to be a creative instead?
I've always wanted to be doing something creative because, but figuring out exactly what that was is something that I really struggled with for a long time. And I think I kind of fell into this, honestly.
Yeah.
Because I've always thought about, you know, shot composition. I've always thought about lighting. When I walk into a room, I see it differently.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I recognized that I perceived that differently that I was like, oh, maybe I need to. That's why I started doing photography, is because I want to, you know, exercise that muscle a little bit more, and it's in turn helped my videography skills. So focusing on shot composition, all that stuff. But to answer your question, a bit of both. You know, it's like I've always had people that I've been very fortunate that I've had people that have very much like encouraged me to pursue this. I've never really had that whole like you're gonna fail, all that talk or whatever, because I'm just very fortunate in that sense.
Yeah.
But I have had those self-doubts like a lot.
Yeah, everyone
does.
does.
Yeah, and like imposter syndrome, amazingly common. And I'm not immune to that, you know? So I think that, yeah, I've always wanted to do something creative, because especially after I did some work that wasn't, like I've had several jobs that are not creative, and it's just, for me, not it. Yeah. It's not it. It's the mental drain from it is not worth it to me. I'll go crazy.
So you do corporate world. I know you say you shoot a lot for that. Is that still, you feel like you're creative? Because are they corporate events, or is it corporate headshots, or like just for people watching that are interested? Because when I first started, I was like, what are people doing to make money? Like, what are they shooting? How are they shooting? Yeah. So like, if you want to explain a little bit on the corporate world, how you got there. I can talk a lot about that. Corporate is surprisingly very creative work, and it's surprisingly very like, it's tricky, because you kind of need to know somebody to get on it, like any industry. Yeah. But once you get in and you're able to like perform, it's very much like it's
it's a weird mix of high stakes and laid backness.
Okay.
Because the people that are hiring you to do the job are not creative.
They also have a shit ton of money.
And they also have a lot of money to work with. And so you can, some of the stuff is like maybe not as creative as like I would like it to be, but at the same time, I've done some pretty wild shoots for the most mundane of subjects, you know, like HR guidebook meetings or whatever. It's like you have like a lot of stuff where it's like you'll bring in like actual talent to like make it entertaining. And so anything you can do to make it more entertaining is a huge plus because you want the audience to pay attention. And you know, corporate isn't the only thing I do. Anybody that might look at my page might see like a diversity of stuff that I do. And I do like a lot of weddings as well. And I think that weddings and corporate and you know, commercial work are all, any project can be creative. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
So it's how far are you willing to take that creativity? How much does your client trust you to do that? If they don't, why? You know, you should always advocate for your own creativity, I think.
Yeah, I agree. So with that, I also want to piggyback off of that point. If someone, let's say it's like a beginner, not necessarily a beginner, but like they've had a camera, they're kind of novice of videography, photography, and they want to make their first money in that world, in the creative world. What's your advice for that person?
Somebody that wants to start making money with their camera.
Make their first dollars.
Find somebody that's running an event, like, for example, a film festival, and just like I did, you can go in and either work for super cheap or for free, because anything that you are starting to do that can make you a connection is what's going to pay off in the long run. So I would say if you don't have a portfolio, building that is huge, because it's not even the portfolio pieces that's getting you work, it's the connections that you're making while you're doing that. So if you know other creatives, like DM creators, find meetups, go on like a photo walk, or because there's a lot of video guys that do that too, go to you know, like any kind of networking thing where you can get in front of people and talk to them. That's like huge. Like what you're doing right now, like that's huge. Like that's going to be, that's going to pay off because you're getting personally connected with these people. So I would say you should always, you know, advocate for like your own rate. But like when you're first starting out, like I still do stuff for free sometimes. And because there's a flip side of that, I get more value out of that at the end of the day. So it kind of depends, like it's a balance. I would say just work on your connections and just do good work, and it's going to keep paying. Pay it forward for your next job with the amount of effort and the quality and like that you're putting in not just in terms of like the outcome of the project, but like the relationships that you're building with the people. That's huge. Yeah,
I can agree to that point. Every client I have right now has come from me sending a DM, walking in there, calling them, being like, hey, I'll do a free shoot. If you guys like it, we'll work together.
And that's
next
hard.
week we work together. It's like, that's how you can go get clients, especially if you're just starting. It's like if you don't have anything and you shoot for free, they're not going to ask you what's your work. They'll be like, yeah, give me this for free, please. You know what I mean?
I'm like, in my personal situation, I was very fortunate that like I found a relatively high paying gig like pretty early on, but it wasn't until after I was grinding it out for a long time and I was able to actually like reapply those skills. But yeah, like reaching out to people, cold DMing, cold calling, all that stuff, like it works, you know. It's a ton of work though. Like I'm sure you know, you've probably had more, you know, left on red than, you know,
all the time.
But you have to like build up your tolerance to that.
It's also confidence. Like if you're confident in what you're offering, there's this great video. You know the guy who does like the gold in New York? He has the watches. I forget what his like, name is. But he was going around with like a piece of gold downtown New York.
I saw that.
Yeah, that video where he's like, here, take this gold, literally $1,000 for free, and people walk by, and like he's so confident in what he's offering because he's providing so much value. Like he's like, we love when people don't take it because they're just missing out on money. Like I'm giving you money. Same concept if you're confident in what you do. Yeah,
there's a lot to. I mean, that's like a huge lesson too. It's like a lot of people they don't recognize that, you know, and yeah, I mean, just be true to like whatever it is that you're making, whatever you have you're offering. Like even if you're just starting out, like I guarantee you that you have an original take on a problem that is valuable. You know, your approach, like be confident in your own abilities in terms of like whatever your concepts are as well. So, I mean, yeah, everybody's got value on set.
I agree. So with talking about your work paths, what do you think has been your biggest accomplishment so far in your creative career?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not because I have so many, but because it's tough to quantify like what I would consider to be a big accomplishment. You know what I mean? Like for me, it's like, I think my biggest accomplishment though isn't any one particular project. It's the connections that I've built by doing this.
Yeah.
And my biggest and even a larger accomplishment than that, now I'm thinking about it, is the fact that I'm able to do this at all.
Yeah.
Full time is like, I never lose sight of that. And it's like very fortunate. I never lose sight of like how fortunate I am to be able to do something creative to provide for myself and my family.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, a lot of people can't get to that point, or everyone can, but they'll give up like before they get there, you know?
I think that's exactly it.
Yeah.
So for the people that are watching at home, it's the longer that you put in time for this, it will pay off. It's just kind of like a filter, you know? So I've noticed that everybody that's very successful compared to, you know, myself or anybody else, like they've only been doing it longer.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? And there's been times when I wanted to give up for sure, but I don't know, maybe I'm too stubborn.
Yeah, which is, you kind of have to be sometimes with this.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah. But it's not always roses, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, it's very tough sometimes, you know, because especially when like you are the value, that can be a little taxing as well. But if you don't give up, like you will be fine, I promise. But like, just gotta stick with it.
At the end of the day, it's business too. Like business is tough, especially if you start diving into the business side and it's like, it isn't just a creative hobby. No. It's like running a business is running a business.
90% of my job is emails.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the big thing too. It's like, if you really want to get good at this job, you have to learn how to write emails very effectively. It's totally.
I agree.
Yeah.
Next one is for the people that are actually in the city. So how do you feel about the creative community in Chicago right now? And do you feel like it's changing?
I feel like the creative community is really strong, but a little scattered. And I feel like there is change that's happening. Like, I feel like with COVID, there was a little bit of a scattering. Like a lot of people I know like went to LA, a lot of people went to New York, but then now I'm seeing a lot of those people like either coming back to Chicago or more new faces starting to pop up in the Chicago scene. Yeah. My experience working with people it's always been very positive. Like everybody's here to just kind of like support each other. Yeah, I mean, I would say that, you know, the change that's happening is that the community is becoming stronger and closer together.
I can agree.
For sure. Yeah.
I see some cool stuff happening. Like Freddie Fang is doing his social thing. You know, he's starting his...
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's doing, I don't know exactly what he's doing, but he's trying to start a social, almost like event type of thing where you can go to events consistently for creative people.
That's cool.
Whether it be rented out spaces or like bars, not necessarily like to drink, just to have like a space to go to. So yeah, that's cool. Shua's said he's planning on starting like a Discord to do cafe meetups and stuff with like certain creators in the city. So
that's awesome.
It's going to be, I hope over the next couple of years, it's like people are starting to actually do stuff together.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll have to check that out myself because that sounds like something I would totally be down for. I mean,
exactly.
that's the thing is like when you're working as a creator, especially when you're working for yourself in any kind of business, it can feel a little isolating at times. So like being able to get in a room with like-minded people that are facing the same problems, it's like it's very reassuring for sure. And the community, it's like we're all like individuals, but as a collective, it's a really strong community. So
I agree. Do you plan on staying in Chicago?
Yeah.
Forever? Or like
probably, yeah.
Yeah, probably forever.
I mean, like unless something drastically changes in my life. So
yeah.
I mean, my wife and I, we just bought this place. So probably not going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, I would assume.
I'll be around for at least the foreseeable future because I truly believe in, you know, Chicago being the next up and coming city, at least for video production, film production, all that stuff, because there's so much that's going on here. There's so many advantages to it. Like you see shows like, I mean, everybody's seen The Bear now. Like that's all shot in Chicago. That's an entire Chicago crew. That's only,
which is awesome.
Which is freaking awesome.
Yeah.
And then you have like new studios that are popping up. There's a lot of other creative agencies. There's a lot of companies that are starting to put like more money into, you know, like proper studios for films.
Yeah.
And if you want to get into the movie scene, like, I mean, take a class at Columbia, maybe. Like there's plenty of people that come straight out of Columbia and then they go right into movie production right here in Chicago and they work all year long.
Yeah.
Which is great. So that's another way to make money while you're here is like getting connected with something like CineSpace is another huge one as well. Like that's an entire like facility, like, you know, complex. And they do like a lot of commercial and like narrative work out there too. So I think that as video production becomes more accessible for people, you're going to see a lot more spaces like Chicago becoming more populated with creatives because I don't want to go to LA, you know, I don't want to go to New York. I love New York. I'll visit it, but I mean, the Midwest is home, you know? Yeah. So like the fact that like I can do anything that's creative and like I've worked on a couple music videos as well. And like some commercial work out here too. So it's like, I'm not just doing corporate work, but there's a lot of corporate work out here. Yeah. Which is nice.
It is nice to have that for sure, especially close to home.
Which is great.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Cool. So the end of this year and coming up next year, do you have any plans or anything you want to share?
Man. Like how do you mean exactly?
It could be in your career. It could be personal. Like, do you have any plans? This is also the last question, so it's kind of just a wrap up of like the end of this year and the next year. What's your plan for your career, creative, whatever your goal may be?
Okay, so this is I'm gonna shout out something else that I'm also doing. So for this year, the end of this year and next year, I'm actually fortunate enough where I'm starting up a second business.
Sick.
And it's going to be connected with like tabletop gaming and like D&D and all that stuff too, which is totally left field from what I do, but I'm trying to merge video production assets with it. So trying to set up a social club for people that will be right here in the city.
That's sick.
Yeah, so it's going to be a monthly membership, but we're also going to provide like, because I have my video production skills, we're also going to try to provide like studio spaces for like podcasters and stuff. Okay. So it'll be like a social space where people can gather and game, work on their hobbies, or create content. So that's sick. That's what we're trying to do. Hopefully this time next year we'll be open.
That's really awesome. I'll definitely check that out. It's something to look at. It's not super similar. We went there, Mid-Lane Gaming. Yeah. There's like this gaming sports bar. It's I think it's in this area.
It is.
I know the owner because I went to go just shoot some stuff for him for free. Adam is his name. Yeah. He's super cool guy. That space is like, I think it's a good example of making money doing that. It's a little different because it's just gaming and events, but I think he has some good advice on, because I know there's like a ton, he was talking about like a ton of permits you got to get, and like he serves alcohol, so I'm sure it's a whole different hurdle, but it's definitely, he would be a cool person to talk to about that.
Yeah, I'd love to chat with him about that, because that's actually very similar to kind of like, well, not only the area that we're looking at is probably going to be a very similar area, but also just kind of like the concept is like, so me and my buddy, we've been talking about it for like the past year now, and we're like, okay, so like there's really a lack of third spaces.
Yeah, that's what Shua was saying too.
Yeah, so I'm like, if we had more third spaces available for people to kind of like come and gather, because like, I know places like Soho House are always busy. I've been down there a few times, and you know, there's just like this real need because after the pandemic. So after the pandemic, people are trying to like come back together. And like for me, I've always, as long as I can remember, like really enjoyed like gathering around a table, playing cards with friends or whatever, you know, game that you want to do. And then I've like, during COVID, I fell into like this D&D podcast wormhole, and I was like, some of these productions are like pretty good.
Yeah.
So, and then it just got me thinking that, you know, we could do something like that right here in Chicago. So that's what I'm going to be working on, in addition to my regular business stuff, which is, I'm very fortunate that is also growing. So trying to balance those two is probably what I'm up to, because we've got corporate season coming right around the corner as well, which is usually kind of like in the fall, spring is usually when I'm busiest with that stuff. So I'll be traveling with that, but in the meantime, also balancing Enclave Social, which is what it's going to be called. So
it's awesome.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting. A little bit of two sides of the coin. A little bit of the worky stuff and some fun stuff that could be work. So that's what I'm working on.
No, that's awesome. That's the coolest one we've heard so far. So I'm excited to hear that. I'm excited to see that come to life.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, it's enclave.social on Instagram.
Cool.
Yeah, check it out.
I'll definitely check it out. Yeah.
Sweet.
All right. Well, that's it. This was a great one. We have more interviews, I think, this week. So just watch out for that. And that's the end of this one. Peace. And we'll see you in the next one. Nice. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks
really
for having me.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was a great one. Yeah. No, that's actually sick. I love that type of stuff.
Oh, really?
I also like third spaces. I didn't even know the concept until Shua explained it to me yesterday. Didn't even know that
so many people don't.
A thing.
Because it's so much not a thing, you know?
Yeah, it's really not. Like my third space is a coffee shop, but I'm just working there.
Yeah.
So is that really a third space? Not
But
really.
like, are you like chatting and like hanging out with the people in there?
Not really.
Yeah. Like I travel a lot I travel a lot with my wife just for fun.
Yeah.
Because she's also self-employed. So we're fortunate that we can both do that.
And just like do whatever you want.
Yeah. And that's the one thing that like I noticed like right away. I was